Hello, welcome to the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Michael Faree. We got a great show in store for you today. We've got Alain Desmier of Contact State over there in the UK joining us. Alan's got a really great point of view, sort of being in the middle of everything that's sort of happening in the lead gen industry. And so I always enjoy bringing him on board to talk a little shop. So that's going to be happening here in just a moment. Before then, I just want to let you know we've still got Lead Generation World London taking place April 12th and 13th. We're really, really excited to bring Lead Generation World to the UK and Europe and really try to build trust and transparency and grow this industry in a meaningful way. And we do that by educating both lead buyers and lead sellers on best practices and lead generators on best practices in the space. So you can register today if you'd like. You can go to leadgenerationworld.com and click on the London link at the top and register, which would be awesome. If you're interested in sponsoring our efforts to bring, like I said, trust and transparency to the lead gen and performance marketing industry, please use the contact form and we can get you set up with a sponsorship or booth as well. But we're really excited. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Alan and start talking a little shop. All right. Welcome to the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Mike. I've got Alain Desmier here from Contact State joining me again from the UK. Welcome, Alan. How are you?
I'm very good. Michael. How are you?
Good. So it's been, I can't remember. Did we speak last, was it pre-pandemic or post? Because that's how everything is now.
It's at least, right. It's at least a year, I think. I mean, it feels, as you say, it feels like it could be 10 years, but I think it's about, I think it was October time of last year that we first chatted.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, it's good to touch base. It's funny, people used to do what before Christ, after Christ. Now it's before pandemic, BP, AP, I guess is how we do these timelines now.
And hopefully before vaccine and after vaccine. That'll hopefully be what we talk about in the future, right? Yeah.
Man, fingers crossed. So on a personal note, though, you just moved out. Speaking of the pandemic and everything, you just moved out of the city, sort of, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, it's not related to the pandemic. I've got two young children. Two young children, and in the UK they start school at 4, and so it was a long sort of plan to come down to Dorset, where we are, the south of England. And so we sort of moved in July and have then just been going through all that sort of setting up remote offices and all that stuff. But look, it's been quite nice because everyone's going through the same thing. So me being in a bit of upheaval is similar to what everyone else is going through, right? But no, all good. And you may hear some children in a second coming home from school. But look, it's thank you very much. It's been a good year.
Good. And you're a cyclist too, right? So now do you have more roads to get on your bike out there or what?
Look, when my wife is from this part of the world, and when we've talked about coming down here, each time I've come down, I've taken the bike further and further and further. And so like it was a wrench to leave London, my home, but actually, it's some great roads. I mean, we're getting into winter now, so it's not as fun, but no, it's good. It's good, especially like we're all doing crazy hours. Everyone who works in any sort of performance marketing, right? Like you're doing crazy hours. So
and from home too, right? You're kind of stuck in your house for days on end.
To be able to get out and to do a ride, it's been pretty essential to stability of mental health, actually. And so look, it's good. And
good.
Down by that's fish and chips, and down by the seaside is where we are now.
Awesome. So people that don't know you, I know we've done this before, but I think it's worth sort of mentioning what Contact State is before we sort of dive into a whole bunch of other states. So maybe just briefly share what Contact State is and what your mission is.
Yeah, sure. So look, we're a key bit of infrastructure that supports the lead generation industry. We support lead generators. We help them generate better compliant leads, and we introduce them to buyers of leads who themselves want some assurances around the consumer journey, what the customer's seen on their way through to them. And we create this thing called a certificate, and a certificate essentially timestamp and creates a record of what happened on the journey. So a lead generator might be generating an insurance lead. They call us to generate that certificate, and they post that certificate to the buyer. That certificate is important from a TCPA point of view or a GDPR point of view, because it absolutely explicitly outlines what the consumer consented to. And so my mission is to make it easier for lead generators to work with good lead buyers. But as a sort of consequence of that, what we're doing is we're essentially creating a higher standard of lead gen, which we're sort of driving out some of the more fraudulent elements, and we're creating space for good, talented, innovative marketeers who want to work and create lead generation campaigns.
Yeah, and that's really really great, and I love seeing it because, to my understanding, there's been sort of a lot of distrust and lack of maybe transparency within the lead gen performance marketing industry in the UK, and this, I think, contact state is that first step of many to continue to bring transparency to the industry. What is sort of the main problem, though, that you sort of, is it the compliance portion of it that sort of you're solving with bringing that transparency, or is it something around intent, or what is it with regard to the consumer and the relationship between them and the lead generator that you guys are solving?
So I think it starts, the thing we're solving is we're creating a level playing field. I think I've generated leads and ran a successful financial services lead generation agency. And it was hugely frustrating when you were trying to do the right thing for the consumer, when you were trying to create good forms and good adverts that would connect to good lead buyers, to then see people who were doing deeply fraudulent things, double selling leads, and using really really incentivized brand led marketing. And so what we've set out to do here for everyone is to create a level playing field. This is what you should expect when you're buying a lead. I think one of the conversations that I always have is a lead buyer will say, well, we just don't know where these leads are coming from. And that struck me as a really simple thing to solve, because actually good lead generators are very happy to share their landing pages because they're proud of them. And so I thought, well, hang on a second. How do we create a system where the consumer is treated fairly because they're not being cheated or tricked by false advertising? But also, more fundamentally, how do we create a performance platform to allow good lead generators to work with leading lead buyers? So, answer your question, I suppose compliance is the thing that underpins everything. But what we're really trying to do is just make it easier for legitimate companies to work together and under one mission.
Yeah. Have you seen that? I mean, it's part of the problem too, that some of these lead generators have been selling leads from sources that were a little unscrupulous, or maybe weren't being monitored, and the buyer just had no idea. Is that sort of what was happening? Because I know here in the US, like there's aggregators, right? There's lead generation companies that go out and buy leads from other sources, or they aggregate them from all these different sources and then sell them as their own. They also have their own landing page too, but you're just not really sure where some of these leads are coming from. Is that similar to that case in UK?
Yeah, let me give you an example. So life insurance is similar to sort of, I guess, how life insurance works in the US.
Yeah.
There was a real problem of leads being generated by lead generation affiliates who weren't willing to share their landing pages. They were being sold to intermediaries, so brokers of life insurance, who were then selling a product to that consumer. But then in 3 or 6 or 12 months' time, we're finding that consumer was just cancelling, citing that they've been given a better offer somewhere else. And so with a bit of investigation, it was quite clear what was going on was the data was simply being resold on and on and on. It's a breach of clear contractual law, but it's also a breach of the GDPR.
Yeah.
And I think as the GDPR has begun to be more understood in this country, especially and around the world, lead buyers are now far more aware of what their responsibilities are Um,
Hmm.
and as I say, it's deeply frustrating if you're a legitimate lead generator sat on search or Facebook or Instagram trying to do the right thing and generate a lead once, sell it exclusively, and do the right thing by the consumer. It's deeply frustrating if you're competing against lead generators who are sat perhaps offshore, not subject to the same rules, and are reselling that lead again and again and again, and perhaps incentivizing it. So I think a lot of the lead generators I work with, and we've got a lot of lead generation clients, the thing that attracts them most to us is just the way we're able to level the playing field. If you're a buyer and you work with contact state, you know exactly where your lead is coming from, and that's really crucial, I think.
Are most leads in insurance exclusive, or are they sold multiple times?
So I think this is the one. Obviously, I spent many a day in American lead gen conferences, and
Yeah.
spent the early part of my career in LA in Lead Point. The difference between us, right, is in America you sell these leads multiple times,
Yep.
and in the UK it's exclusive. So I think the the expectation from a consumer here is that they're going to receive one phone call. Now, they might do a bit of shopping around. They might make a couple of phone calls, of
Yeah.
course. But the difference between our two sort of systems, I suppose, is the American consumer is far more used to receiving multiple phone calls, whereas certainly the British consumer, and I think the European consumer, goes online, gets one quote, and compares that to what they have right now. So in that,
Interesting.
I guess, gap of understanding, if a consumer says, "Oh, well, I've received two phone calls," the more unscrupulous part of the market said, "Well, they must be shopping around." And so what we were able to do, and it's a big piece of sort of data analysis work, is working with a number of large buyers. We were able to isolate how many, like how much of that you should expect in one campaign. And so if one lead generator goes above that threshold, then it's then easier to see, well, hang on, something's going on here. Now, what our certificates do is that they're able to say, well, we've seen that consumer before, or you've bought that consumer before, or that consumer is applying multiple times, but with different names. What's going on? And so we've been able to help clients in that manner, I guess, just root out the lead generators who wanted to take shortcuts.
Yeah.
I think, talking about where we are right now, it's a tough place to be right now, insurance marketing. Like, it is very, very competitive. And I think it's all the more reason that lead buyers need to be more aware of who they're working with, because, guess what? Like, it's going to cost a little bit more to work with the legitimate guys who are trying to do things properly.
So two things I caught on. One, I just want to clarify too. I think it's important to mention that here in the U.S. it's one instance of data capture that happens and then gets sold to multiple
Right.
insurance providers, so that
Yeah.
the idea is that they can compare between those people within that one instance, right? They can get one from X company, Y company, and Z company, get quotes and compare all those three. What's not okay is if that happens over and over without the consent, right? So that's definitely reselling data per se beyond that one instance is not legal really here or proper,
Yeah.
and of
No,
course it
fine.
happens, but I just wanted to make that clarification.
No, no.
And then the other thing you I think you just mentioned was, did you say you guys did sort of a little bit of a research or study to see um if leads were, how often they were coming back into the system?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we did when we first started was a couple of clients that were very interested in this asked to have a look at their data set and look at, were leads essentially being manufactured.
Yeah.
And what we found were that it wasn't small lead generators. It tended to be bigger affiliate networks with sub affiliates. We're basically working out how to game duplication windows. So they were
Yeah.
working out how, so if a buyer, for example, only duplicated an email, they knew that only one digit of that email or one letter of that email had to change, and they could change any other function of the lead detail itself. And a buyer who was buying a lot of leads were never going to be able to catch it. And so what we started doing was building patterns of repeat data being used in conjunction with other bits of data. People are inherently lazy when it comes to filling in forms when they're trying to trick forms, right? So people will use their ex-wife's address or their university address. And so what we were able to do is say, well, hang on a second, this same pattern of data keeps reappearing, but in different guises. And so from that, we then built our own model that could catch that out, but catch that out in real time. So we don't hold any personal data at contact state. We turn everything into hashes. So what we're doing is we're comparing hashes with each other. So if we see the same sort of data again and again and again, we're going to put a flag in and just say, look, we need to investigate this a bit more. And from doing that, we've been able to work with a lot of our clients and really understand, okay, well, what's going on here. I think there's probably some implications for affiliate networks. I think that market is, I think, very much in decline. It's very hard, I think, to drive a good product and drive a good engaged lead if you've basically relinquished your control over that. And I think that idea of affiliate networks is very much sort of, late 2000s.
Yeah.
I think that's not to say that there aren't lead generators of scale out there. There's plenty of generating hundreds of leads. But I think GDPR now makes it pretty clear that you've got to have full responsibility of what's going on with that level of consent. And I think, I think that's probably one of the developments over the last certainly 5 years.
So let's talk about that for just a second and sort of dive into what that sort of looks like from a GDPR aspect and that affiliate relationship. And I don't know how you would like to define an affiliate for this conversation, but I think because it can be a loose term, right, to some extent, what an affiliate is. But for this example, an affiliate would be someone that you're that may be below a lead generator or even a brand per se. I think let's use it as a lead generator has an affiliate that is what do we want to say? Are they driving traffic to their form, or are they driving it to their own form and then sending them a post like a data lead?
Yeah, you're absolutely right to sort of sharpen the terminology, especially when we're talking across the Atlantic, right? Because we're going to have different terminology, different things.
Yeah.
When I talk about an affiliate in that manner, I mean, like I've got the buyer with a relationship, and I'm going to come and hire you, Michael, to send me lead consumer details. I don't know where they come from, but you're going to drive me leads, and I'm going to resell that lead into my client. That's what I mean. I think when I talk about like sub affiliates, that's sort of what I mean.
Yes, got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I think there's that, right, where if they're just getting posted a lead through an API or whatever to that lead seller, and then they sell it again, and they have no idea where that's coming from, that's a big problem, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the affiliate, relationship where you may have an email affiliate or a paid search or media buyer that can run traffic to your landing pages branded with GDPR and all that sort of stuff. And they are getting paid on a cost per action, whether that's a full form or an impression or whatever it may be, or a call. And in that instance, you own the traffic. I mean, you own the property and you know where it's coming from. You could have contact state on there. Everything's good to go. So
and we work in a number of those environments where the client is the affiliate who's driving the traffic to a landing page. We're integrated into that landing page, and we're saying, okay, it's come from Facebook, or it's come from email, or it's come from search, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, because in that aspect, that's a very, very important relationship. We can't all be email experts. We can't be media buying experts. We may not have a list that's specific to insurance or finance. And so having those guys to be able to do it, but drive that traffic to your landing pages is what you want.
Yeah, wholly agree.
Yeah, so the real problem is those affiliate relationships or aggregator relationships, of what I would maybe say here in the US, where they're just buying leads basically. And they have no idea where they're coming from. And in that instance, I think that's where it's important to require that a contact state certificate is attached to every single lead somebody buys, period, no matter how it's generated, right? Whether if they're aggregating it or not, there should be some transparency into how that lead's being generated. It should be industry standard.
Agreed. I think that is, I've said it a number of times. I think probably talked about it a lot in the press. Is That's the fundamental requirement. You
Right.
must absolutely know where that lead's been generated. There's
Yep.
still value in affiliate networks who can get you loads of leads. Great, that's fine.
100%.
But as long as you know, you have to know. It's not like, I think there's been quite a few cases now, certainly under the GDPR and the ICO, which is the British regulator that enforces data
Yep.
regulations here. The data, they find a number of businesses where the defense of the business was, we didn't know,
Yeah.
we never asked. And like, it's clearly not a defense, right? Like to say,
Yeah.
well, they said they were going to drive us leads, we bought them. And I think that's, I think, not to underestimate this point, I would say the majority of lead buying in the UK still operates like that,
Yeah.
right? Still
Yeah.
operates
And that's a
completely
problem.
blind.
Right.
That's yeah, and that's what
Yeah,
we're trying to solve.
we're planning to have a representative from the ICO at Lead Generation World UK coming up in
Fantastic.
April, which would be a great conversation. But there's two things I think that you noted too. Is there's two I think there's separate issues. There's a value of a lead, and then there's compliance of a lead, right? So, and they don't always all go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is, obviously you need to have compliant leads, that you need to have transparency in it, all that sort of stuff. But that doesn't mean it's going to be any more valuable. And I mean by that as in, you're not going to have a rate of return on your investment that you may from a non-compliant lead. I'm just throwing that out there.
No, sure.
It's they're separate, right? So one at its core, like you said, is making sure that all your data is compliant and there's transparency there. And then separately looking at the value of those leads and how they're performing as well. So, right, you know what I'm trying to say? Because it's not
No,
always
absolutely.
hand in hand.
And I think we've done this, like we're trying to get, I mean, your point's exactly correct, but I would go one step further and say that when I look at, for example, the insurance industry, for example, lots of people will calculate lead to sale and they'll say, well, my lead to sale is 17%, but they won't calculate what the cancellation rate is like after a year or after 9 months.
Right.
And my argument is always, you're inviting fraud if you don't have control of those cancellation metrics. I try and put people on this idea of income per lead, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's everything. It's sale, it's contact, it's average commission, it's anything else you've got involved in that sale process. Let's have I know, I see it every day of my life.
Yeah.
It's leads that are generated a certain way in insurance or mortgage or whatever it might be have a higher premium if the messaging is slightly different, if the opt-in is slightly different, there's a higher premium. And so what I've tried to do, and we are being really successful in how we're changing the industry with this, is I'm trying to get people to focus on value, right? Like, so okay, that search lead costs £70, but you make twice as much money if you pay £70 rather than buying that lead for £35 because the consumer's been tricked into it. And I guess we're trying to bring this thinking into what has been a quite static industry for the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, because and it's hard to quantitate some of this stuff too, right? Is how many times have I called that person, that cheap lead? How many times hours did I have to send in getting a contact rate that may be subpar, and how much does that cost me as an organization? And how many of those people actually close? All that's it gets difficult, and so it's not easy, but everyone should be working towards trying to figure out what are all the dollars that are going into working this type of lead versus this type of lead, and so forth. But
I've got one more thing for you.
Yeah.
The other thing that people have often talked about is this idea of back end, like revenue deals, right? Like, so you come to me and say, okay, I'm just going to send you a load of leads. And if you get anything from them, I'll share with you the commission. It's like throughout my career, it's always been seen as a bit of a bargain basement, because what happens is these leads go into the bottom of the pool, right?
Yeah.
And the leads that you're paying for go on the top. Well, the reason they do that is neither side trusts each other. So the seller doesn't trust the buyer, so the seller just sends rubbish traffic. The buyer doesn't trust the seller, so just works the leads they're paying for first. And so one of the things we're trying to do is standardize APIs so that I can pull back information from the CRM that tells the seller this lead was rung within 5 seconds of it being called, and it's been called 17 times. So the seller has absolute confidence that their leads are being properly called, and so then has more confidence about putting good media into it. And then it's frankly it's a better outcome for the seller because they're going to get paid more, and the buyer's not beholden to this upfront cash flow problem that lead generation creates. And
Right.
so we're trying to solve that problem through just standardized reporting. And again, it's a trust thing. It's a trust thing.
Yeah. On that note, how is that working out for you with integrations with CRM? Because what I've heard from my conversations with individuals there is that there's not like a Velocify, like we would have here in the US that's specific towards people that buy leads, right? There's the process is built out. The APIs are just different. It's not Salesforce per se. That's more of a CRM, where you just put things in it. Yeah, you can create rules and all that sort of stuff. How is that something that you're working on now with that sort of standardization, and are you having issues because you're having to sort of work with or integrate with Salesforce type of or Zoho, or these CRMs versus lead management systems?
I mean, Michael, you are talking to a business development guy, so the problem stops when I send the email to my business partner, who's the developer, and he gets on it. But look, in all seriousness, of course, there is no standard. There's no standard way in which leads are certified. There's no standard way in which leads are integrated. Everyone's got their own integrations.
Yeah.
Certainly, some of the bigger companies struggle with just multiple types of, and there are some really brilliant businesses out there who offer CRMs. But I think probably one of the bigger challenges is that everyone wants to do things in a very different way. And so what we're trying to do in from our element is really try and standardize all of those parts of the lead generation chain so that it is really easy for one seller to work with 50 buyers and one buyer to work with 50 sellers. And to add to that, what we're then trying to do is it's a minefield if you're a lead generator to then think, well, what does the privacy policy need to say? What does the cookie policy need to say? And so, we're not there yet, but I think one of the things we're trying to standardize is here's the interpretation of what data means and what you can do with it. Here's the way what you need to do in terms of if a consumer wants to be forgotten under the GDPR, and here's how we can help you deal with that. So look, we've still got some way to go on that. But
is this a new product? Is this a new service that you guys are working on bringing to the industry, or
not really? I think in all honesty, the way that our businesses have evolved is we started out working directly with buyers of leads because buyers of leads, that's where the immediate issue was. And we've been very successful in working with some really, really interesting people. As we've now gone on, we're being approached by lead generators who say, can you help us solve these problems? And so I wouldn't say it's not a new product, but we're very much becoming, that core piece of infrastructure, I suppose, that sits and helps both sides just make it work and make it work easily each time. Our ambition was always to make the seller side. I think when we first chatted, and this is still what we'd like to do, we'd like the certificate to be public. We want to give this consumer their certificate because there's nothing. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you let the consumer know that they've been generated here and passed to this buyer? That's a great thing to let the consumer exercise their own controls under the GDPR. So I think long term, our ambitions are to be consumer facing and to have context data as a trust pilot of data interactions. But yeah, our business is entirely around how do we make it easier for sellers and buyers, good sellers and buyers, to trade and meet each other.
Yeah, no, that's great. What you got me thinking too, just going back a couple comments around the transparency of fraud sort of that could sort of take place and sort of honing in where there's good data was also made me think about sort of the time frame that similar companies like Contact State came out here in the US, and there was a shift because data started to be required. Transparency was starting to be required, and people were starting to find this fraud and really, get it out of the industry. Things started to move to calls, and then calls, and then now it's all about generating calls. And then there became sort of a very hard, undetectable way to track fraud and calls because it's really easy to hire, somebody out of the country to pick up a phone for, $3-4 an hour, 4 or 5 pounds an hour, and just say, yeah, I'm not really interested right now. Can you call me back later? And then never pick up the phone again. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now you're creating these call transfers in a fraudulent way as well. And that's sort of that evolution of shifting from data fraud to call fraud. Now I think it's being sifted out, but I think it goes back to buyers having that analytic base that they can pinpoint these issues, and they're looking for the full sale. Like, are these customers actually coming through? Are they actually turning
Right.
into business for 6 months to a year? All that sort of stuff, and looking further down the road, just not at the did a lead get generated? Did a call happen? That's it.
I've said this to you before, but one of the things that I guess makes me really interested in this sector, and I never thought I'd find myself sort of excited by data transparency and certification, but here we are. I was in LA, in Las Vegas, in New York, lead conferences and meeting lead clients. Everyone's talking about fraud. I'm in London and Bristol, where my companies were. Everyone's talking about fraud. We're in Berlin and Paris, where the companies that I sold my previous business to, everyone's talking about reselling and lead fraud. Like this is the same issue, and so it's. I'm really like, one of the things, the positives of lockdown has been that I've spent time like going along to people like Active Prospects and Jania's, like their live events, and just listening to TCPA and thinking, when the European regulators get hold of this is coming. This is coming. Like it's and in my
Right.
career, I've seen this trend of America 12 months or so in front, 12
Yeah.
months later, you get, and then it goes to Germany and France about 8 months after that. And so it's been really fascinating for me to like actually research American legislation, and then think about, and then what we're doing here is doing some really deep thinking around how do we prepare ourselves as a business for clearly the evolution. And already, I don't want to send you to sleep, but the financial regulator here is already planning some changes in the way that promotions are changed in January. We expect to see that legislation. It's like, it's actually already happening. And so it's been fascinating to be able to research the different parts, and then build a business that's able to respond to the changes that are happening at the time.
Yeah, because you can see the things starting to happen, right? And you see it's already happened, and it's no different. This is consumer, or well, this is behavioral stuff that people, whether you're a fraudster or what, there's going to be some development in how do they continue to try to game the system, and you can see what they've done in the U.S., where they started out doing, bots, trying to buy
Absolutely.
batches of IP addresses, make it look like somebody's actually filling out the form, but it's just a bot doing it.
Absolutely.
They started doing that, then they started doing click fraud, and then they did call, like you see the development of this already sort of taking shape, and you could probably see the signs, if not already there in the UK or Europe, wherever it may be. So it is
Uh,
beneficial to be able to sort of look and see, okay, this is coming, if
I
it's
think
not
it.
already
I
there.
think it. No, quite. Look, I think it really matters, perhaps not more, but look, I think it's no secret that the world's economies are heading for a tough time over the next 10 years. Clearly, we've just been through a massive, massive sort of lack of employment, high unemployment rate, really tough working conditions for lots of people, and I think that has a knock-on effect to what the welfare state will be able to do, and what people's lack of money will mean for them in terms of risk of losing jobs and houses. And so I think you often see a lot of this like fraudulent marketing in things like really high APR short-term loans, or debt management, or in the UK
Yep.
there were new laws around what you could do with your pension, and there are real scams about trying to trick people out of their pensions. And so I think as much as that I'm interested in this business and what the work we're doing from a performance angle, I think there's a really good case to be made that when people are going online to look about what they do with their pension or their mortgage, or where they're going to live, this stuff should be guided by some stuff that's set in stone. You shouldn't be able to do this, you should be able to do this. And I think certainly gearing up for that next year, I think we're going to see a lot of it next year. And I'm interested in the pensions and investment sector particularly, because I think that's one area where people are going to cut corners, and it's one
Mhm.
area where it's devastating financially for someone vulnerable who can be cheated out of their pension. That's
Yeah.
something we should be able to stop.
Absolutely. And there's so many levels to what we're talking about with the fraud, right? I mean, and people trying to potentially scam individuals for their pension. I mean, that's a whole other thing, right? Beyond marketing. And it should be noted too. We're talking a lot about fraud and but this isn't the whole industry. This is a portion of it. And there's ways to there are amazing lead generation companies out there that are really providing amazing services to brands to help them scale, to leverage their own capabilities of marketing and optimization and paid search and media to help brands grow that they beyond what they could
Absolutely.
ever do. And that's the power of the lead gen and performance marketing ecosystem, is that they can partner together. And so there's plenty of legitimately good people and companies out there. We're sort of focused on the
Of course we
percentage
are.
of
Of course we are.
bad at the moment.
But
But
it's why, like, when we started, like,
yeah,
that's, you know, it's why the focus has got to be on getting good lead generators
yeah,
in and saying you're different because of this. And I
yeah.
think that, like, if you have a look at our website, you'll see that I've got them proudly listed on our website. People that integrate with Contact State, because I want them to be proud that actually they're doing things a bit differently. I think that's a good thing. But
100%. And yeah.
you're entirely correct.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of good individuals and companies that are doing the right thing and want to do the right thing. And the last thing they want to do, they want to create partnerships with brands, without a doubt. Um,
And we've got to make it easier for them, I think, is the point, right? Like, we've got to
yeah,
make it easier for them,
yeah,
for a big brand, to say, oh, I can see why I can trust you because I can see everything you're doing. Like,
exactly.
that's like, lead gen is where I've spent my entire career,
Yeah,
and there are some brilliant businesses,
yeah,
in the UK and around the world.
yeah.
And,
I
and a
love it.
lack of sort of, go on,
Yeah, I
sorry.
love it because I could easily say, well, there's first of all, it's easy for a lead buyer to say, ask, where are these leads coming from? Show me all the websites that these leads are coming from, and then actually looking at those websites to see, one, are they getting any traffic? I think we talked about this on our call last year, but where's the traffic coming from? Going to a site called SEMrush or something where you can research, are they
Yeah.
actually driving any traffic to these landing pages? If they're dormant websites, you have a problem, right?
Yeah,
But
right. Yeah, I mean, but you say this, but look, and I agree with you. But this is still how most of the industry is,
I know.
like, a lot of the industry is done. And so,
Yeah.
I guess there are people like I'm speaking on behalf of lots of very frustrated, legitimate lead generators who are like, well, what are we supposed to do? We can't compete with guys reselling data. And I guess that's the hopeful message of all of everything I do, is there is a way,
Yeah.
and we just need to differentiate you between what you're doing.
Absolutely. And all those sort of, that example of doing all the hard labor is the hard stuff, but everybody can do it. But the easy thing is just making sure your partners have contact state or some type of, transparent,
Certification. Yeah.
certification in there. I mean, that's the easy part. And so, um, really, really good stuff. And I, like I said, I just, we're talking a lot about fraud, but obviously the industry is a industry of good people and good brands and good companies that are, like, legitimately trying to help companies scale.
And I think I would go further than that and say
Yeah.
we should be making it easy for talented marketeers to work from all over the world, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
100%.
I've still got American clients. I know. I mean, there are plenty of British lead generators who generate leads in America
Yeah.
and have to do all TCPA stuff. Like, it. This is. It's not just a British thing or a European thing.
No.
It's, these relationships are global, and we just need a standard by which everyone understands.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what sets them apart.
Well, I'm happy to see that there's progress truly being made, and I think over, probably the next 12 months, if not sooner, a lot of this stuff is going to start to go away. The more buyers and the more lead generators that
I think
participate
so.
in contact state, I mean, truly the better for everybody in the industry. So let me ask you this: last time we spoke, like you said, I think last year, obviously we're dealing with this pandemic. You guys are on lockdown, I think now. Part
We
of,
are. Yeah.
the United States is so fragmented. for the fact that we've got all these states with different rules, regulations, all kinds of stuff. And so there's certain states that here that are locked down, certain that states that aren't, all this sort of stuff. But having said that, what have you sort of seen in the has anything changed on the sort of lead gen side? Anything notable like that you sort of have seen from your point of view since everything started and as of today?
Yeah, I mean, look, dramatic changes in the way I think the industry, some sectors work. You had a mortgage sector that relied on working face to face, doing home visits, equity release home visits. You know, May, June, July, that didn't happen, and so you had a whole load of businesses going, "What do we do now?" And it's funny, a lot of these businesses actually themselves became broader and more national and telephone based. Great for lead gen, right? And so that changed what that did. You've got insurance, which it's gone through sort of a bit of a up and down, because protection is a product clearly that life insurance that people were very, very interested in quite quickly, and then became less interested in as things went on, and it's been up and down. It's probably the toughest environment, I think, to generate life insurance leads right
Really?
now that I've seen in maybe 15 years. Yeah,
What
no
do you
worries, no
what do you
worries.
think that is? Why do you think that is?
An oversaturation earlier on in the year,
Yeah.
right? So there are lots of reports of lots of life insurance businesses writing 2, 3, 4 times the amount of business they would normally write in April and May. So life insurance is a self-fulfilling market, right? You've only got
Yeah.
so many people at one time who need it and want it. And so a lot of those people already did the business. And then you've got lots of people, then you've got an economic, I guess, factor here, which is suddenly you come out into September, people have lost their jobs or worry about their jobs. They're going to try and get it cheaper. And so you've got a lot of people clicking on adverts who are just shopping around. That's fine. That's the consumers, consumers is that's what the whole process is there for, to get them the best deal. But what that means is you've got all these adverts who are attuned to a certain consumer, who are then creating consumers that they've never seen before. And then you've probably got the situation now, which is October, we saw things like Facebook and Instagram get flooded with Christmas retailers trying to get rid of clearly all of their stock, all of their Christmas stock, which forced out a lot of the financial services guys from social. You saw those guys flooding into search. I mean, you've seen, certainly I think we've seen a record high cost per click for life insurance terms
Wow.
that I've ever seen, as well as then this effect that consumers are really uncertain. And so, but then I'm sort of rambling on here, but
Oh,
then you go
please.
to a
Yeah.
different sector like investments or pensions, and it's different again. Mortgages different again. You've got a bit of government intervention which is changing the way the mortgage market works, because incentivizing people to sell their houses. So to answer your question directly, no standard, but just the most up and down year I've ever seen.
Yeah. And so what about from the well, from the lead gen, lead quality side, are you seeing much change in uh intent of leads? Does that mean, I don't know if you have that type of insight, but
Yeah, we do. I mean, and I think to the point before, intent was through the roof in
yeah.
April and May.
Okay.
And I wrote about this last month, but I actually think there's going to be something of a bit of an early reckoning
Yeah.
this year, because I think January is your time, right, where you get stuff sorted out and you do your health insurance and you look at your energy and you look at your car. I think that's all going to creep forward. I think it's all going to creep forward to the Christmas period. I think people are going to be online trying to sort things out. When I used to generate mortgage leads, I had a client who insisted that Boxing Day was the best. Boxing Day is our 26th, right?
Yeah.
It's our day after Christmas Day. Was the best day of the year to generate and buy mortgage leads, because consumers were already fixed out of that Christmas mindset into, right, now's the time to get my remortgage sorted. We've got this traditional slowdown in lead gen marketing that happens every year,
Yeah.
10th, 11th of December. I just don't think that's going to be the case this year. And I think it's going to be a much more positive Christmas, leading into then a very positive Q1, vaccine, people getting determined to get back out again, people determined to get back to normal. Now, what difference that will have for individual sectors, I don't know. But I think from a purely high intent business, I think lead gen is in for a very, very positive year next year. And I think if there are people thinking about entering, or brands that are thinking about investing in lead gen, for a marketing discipline that is completely predicated on return and value for money, I think lead gen can do really, really well next year.
Yeah. So you touched on it, but you guys just started the what you call the leader, which is is it monthly
Yeah,
newsletter?
yeah. So yeah, we're working with 50 or so lead generators. We're working with multiple lead buyers. We're working with lots of different regulatory departments. We're working with lots of press. And I suddenly realized that we've probably got quite a lot of information that'd be quite useful to people who are thinking about this sector. And so, yeah, we've started writing down a monthly newsletter of the things that we're noticing, the trends that we're noticing, what we're seeing with customer intent, what we think about new changes and how they'll affect things. So yeah, if anyone's interested in that, please come along to contactstate.com and sign up. I write it once a month, the first Friday of every month. But yeah, it's just really, I'm really trying to chart the trends in UK lead generation.
Yeah, well, that's what caught my eye, and that's why we're talking, because I saw it and I thought it was really, really interesting. Some of the stuff you're reporting, and certainly I'm signed up for it, and because I think it provides a different point of view, some trends in of what's happening in the industry from a neutral third party. So I'm looking forward to new ones coming out as well. I'm curious with regards to some of these ups and downs. Would you say the lead gen sort of industry has been relatively resilient, or has it been up and down for them too? And I guess I'm sort of duplicating my question to some extent, but the reason why I ask is because in the U.S. here, lead gen companies have been thriving, while other
Yeah,
industries are maybe suffered, of course. But online activity, creating leads, all this sort of stuff has just been through the roof
yeah,
across multiple industries. And so the companies that are the lead generators, the websites that are comparison sites, all that sort of stuff, you see are, I mean, just doing just fine through these times. Is that right? Or
yeah. Look, I think I think companies are thriving, and I think certainly if you only generate life insurance, you're probably having quite a tough time of it right now. But I think if you've got multi disciplines, if you've got multi products that you're working in, I think you're doing fine. I think what I've been impressed about, and increasingly impressed, is we work with a number of large brands, recognizable sort of national brands, who want to speak to lead generators. And I think I don't want to say the demise of the big digital agencies, because they've still got their own place, but I think there's a transfer of power. I really do. And I think lots of big brands are asking questions of their own PPC departments, right? Their own marketing departments. And they think, well, hang on, if we can buy a lead for 50 quid, why did it cost you 100 quid to generate? And so I think there's a really good conversation going on. I think there's a lot of um, there's just a lot more professionalism, a lot more looking at um, the way in which this is done. So I think if I turn around and say, oh, it's great for lead gen, there's going to be some lead generators screaming, saying, look at the profits I haven't made this
yeah,
month.
yeah.
It's been a tough month. But I
Right.
think in terms of prospects, I think it's very, very positive.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question, and I won't take too much more of your time, but I
No,
want to sort of dig into the multi-sale, strategy of a lead.
yeah,
So, like we alluded to earlier, across mortgage, insurance, you name it, a lead, someone comes to a shopping website, Lending Tree, let's just use it as an example, which is a big lead generation company here in the U.S. for mortgage, refinance, credit cards, all sorts of financial products. Probably one of the earliest lead generation companies in the world, you know.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but and certainly one of the most successful. But anyways, if someone comes there, they're shopping for a mortgage, they fill out the form. That information there is going to be sold to up to 3 mortgage banks, and those banks are they're gonna be shown what banks that those are going to on the page, on the thank you page, and those people are gonna call them, and they're gonna be able to shop between those 3 banks. Th- what is, when we look at that and we look at UK who would sell maybe just exclusively, is there any problem with maybe potentially letting a lead generator sell a lead once or twice if it's transparent and everyone knows what's happening? I'm not trying to
No,
say
no.
hide the fact, but be transparent. Let the consumer know that you're going to get multiple quotes, and let them shop all within one process, and allow the lead generator to then monetize a lead a little bit more, invest that in higher probable marketing strategies, and really kind of work that system. What do you think that, what's stopping that from sort of happening in the UK?
Yeah. So let's clarify a couple of points. First, multi-sell, that sort of the product you described there, does happen in the UK. It happens in things like if I go to a website called Rated People, for example, which is a tradesman website. I'm going to put a job there, and I'm going to get 4 quotes and 4 phone calls. So it's not solar
Got it.
panels the same, education the same. So
Okay.
actually, it exists, just not in the financial services
Got it.
arena. And there's
Okay.
insurance, mortgage, and sort of health insurance. And I guess the thinking there has always been just the client journey from a regulator point of view, but also back to this point about what the customer expects. The customer expects them to provide a quote, and actually they haven't signed up to being sold 3-4 times. I think it's possible, but I think to make it possible, you'd have to guarantee that a network wasn't selling that other lead on 5-6 times, right? Because you suddenly get yourself into
Oh
a
yeah,
chain,
yeah, yeah. No,
and
it
you've got
couldn't.
15 calls.
Yeah, 100%. Right.
If you could use technology in a way in which
Well, contact state would
partnered
solve that
people.
problem, right?
Yeah, I don't want to. I've got a long roadmap, Michael. I don't want to. My developers, my business partner is already looking at this podcast, thinking I've already overpromised 2022.
No, but
Yes,
listen, at the
yes.
end
We
of the,
could,
yeah,
we
you're
could, we could,
right.
we could. Yeah,
Yeah, there
long
needs to
term
be
we
the
could. Of course we could.
transparency.
I suppose the question always is, and whenever I've tested it with the market, and I've sat, I said to you before, long meetings with Mark Diana of Lower My Bills and then Lead Point. Him sort of, him making this my number one action when I used to work for him back in 2008, saying, look, we've got to deliver multi-sold leads. The truth is, the market has always rejected it. It's always said, I don't want you to share this lead. Buyers have always said, I don't want you to share it. And I don't think we've ever been able to really sort of, the difference, I suppose, here is lots of lead lead buyers in the UK, certainly from a mortgage perspective, which is where I guess the multi-sell is irrelevant, are individual lead buyers. They might buy 1 lead a day, or maybe 1 lead a week. And so if that lead buyer is then competing with 10 other massive companies for that same lead, they're calling it the 20 seconds, you've diminished the value of the lead for that lead. Now, that's not to say that you should just create a fake industry just to protect other people, but I think the more fractured and disaggregated the mortgage and insurance market has meant that you don't, in America, you've got much bigger buyers, I think. So it's easier to go, well, I'm going to be the first to that lead, so let's see what we can do. Combined with, I think, a British dislike of being called multiple times, and those things, I think. Now, so I'm not ruling it out, but I just don't. I never meet lead generators or lead buyers who say, "God, I wish I could sell this lead 3 times." Like, it's just not really a thing.
Hold on one second. I'll put my robot vacuum
Oh
thing just
yeah,
started. Hold on. I need to turn it on.
that happened
Sorry about
last time. It's clearly just
that. Did
likes
it
the sound
happen
of
last
my voice,
time?
or doesn't like the sound of my voice after an hour. But
All right, cool. I'm going to pick it up from here. Okay, so yeah, no, I get it. And it's interesting that you say that lead generators never really wanted to sell it multiple times. I just want to dive into it a little bit, because from my point of view, and probably Mark's point of view too, is that there is some behavioral aspects to controlling the shopping experience, because it's silly to think that somebody shopping for a mortgage or a protection policy is only filling out that one form to get that one quote. They're likely filling out another form, and this would be interesting to find out, right? Is
yeah,
how many times are people out there shopping and being seen on forms? But if, the idea was you can have that fill out the one form and you can have the quotes all in this one, one protected process, and you get these calls. Now, listen, there's factors into it that, you can't sell one of those leads to another lead generator and they're going to say that's crazy. But if
Yeah,
we're just silo off the fraud and the crazy stuff for saying, putting it all into one process, it's also sort of been shown that when a consumer has a choice to make, they actually make a choice versus, well, if it's just this quote, then fine. But if I have three choices and there's a clear good or bad one, whatever it may be, or there's some way to, they make that decision. And
yeah,
sometimes that's working with the local guy, the small guy. And sometimes that's working for the big guy. Sometimes that's the rate, maybe that's customers, but giving them a comparison oftentimes leads a person to actually make a decision
yeah.
versus
No,
no
and
decision at all.
it's a valid point. I don't
Yeah.
in any way dispute that. And I think what would be interesting would be if you said to the consumer on the form, "Hey, do you want one quote or do you want three quotes?" Right?
That's a
And like
great,
that would be interesting, and I think that would be an interesting thing. I think. Then you can say, well, actually, we are, and then you might actually prevent the consumer going one, two, three, and applying three times elsewhere, right? Like there might actually be some
yeah.
connection with this idea.
Yeah.
As I say, I think that's got to be driven. That's got to be driven by demand from the buyer. And so, if you think about there are various different types of mortgage method in the UK. There are various different types of insurance methods. I think you want to be able to align those so that you have companies that go, yeah, actually, I don't mind. I don't mind, comparing my policies with this policies or doing that with that. So yeah,
Yeah, no, it's just
it's not,
interesting. It's just an interesting conversation, and I certainly don't claim to have the right answers either. And it's my just sort of N+1 example. But
yeah,
the other thing too is, as a buyer and as a on the lead gen side, we would when I was on the lead gen side, we would build out a new vertical. And oftentimes in that vertical, whether it's auto insurance or whatever it is, mortgage, we would start out selling exclusive leads for the most part, generally because we only had a small batch of new clients anyways that wanted
yeah,
to test it out and get it going. And then once we did that, we built into selling it 2 times, and we would tell them, okay, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. We're going to get to 3. We're going to get to 3 times as the max times we're going
yeah,
to sell a lead. But this is sort of our pathway to it. And we would see we wouldn't see a huge degradation in close rates, which is odd, from exclusive to shared leads. But the
interesting.
price difference would
That
be a
is
little bit,
interesting.
and the things would change. And I could never put my finger on it. But when we would sell an exclusive lead, let's just say it was £50 for UK example, for a lead, for an exclusive lead, and then we would lower it to, I don't know, £30 for a shared lead. So now our total revenue is £60 on that
Yeah,
lead. The total cost per sale for those buyers didn't really change. It was
yeah,
literally the same.
yeah,
And they closed about, similar amount of leads. It was really interesting. And I think, we need to get a behavioral economist on, or on to talk about this, but I think it really does come down to forcing someone to make a choice. And they're going to, if you don't give them an opportunity to actually make a choice and it's an exclusive lead, they may not get it done. They may put
yeah,
it off for a month. They may not feel there's an urgency because they don't have people call, like doing
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I don't know. These are all speculative
No,
things,
no, no.
but yeah,
It's fascinating, and I've got just a couple of points if I may.
yeah.
I think the one thing that's broken right now that doesn't really work very well is the lead submitting a lead to then the buyer calling back, right? Like one of the
Yes.
things I
Yeah.
think,
That whole
like,
lead
that's
management
broken.
issue. Yeah.
That's broken. I want to be able, like, I want a life insurance quote. I want to be able to book a time for you to call me back. Don't call me back 9 times because you're free. That's rubbish. Like, I want you to call me back when I say. I'm the consumer. That whole thank you page stuff is something we've talked about a lot here in our sort of roadmap. That's broken, and we need to fix that. I think there's then another point around what do you want lead generation sites to be? Do you want them to be single, disposable, really plain data capture forms? Or do you want to encourage the building of really content-rich customer champions that are actually saying, look, here's the difference between an advised firm and a non-advised firm. Here's the difference between this mortgage and this mortgage. We think you should speak to this one, this one, this one. And I think if you want that, then I can see how this works. But that then also relies on getting rid, or at least limiting, this impact of someone who just wants to come in quickly, really dirty form, not compliant, sell leads as many times as possible. And so of course you're right. There's probably a better way to do it. And sorry, my third point is the point I touched on earlier about this idea of, if you find a really stable buyer, well, let's try and make it easier. Let's make their cash flow easier and make my return a bit better by coming to a better revenue share deal. And actually that might incentivize people to treat customer data with a bit more respect, rather than just shove it in a dialer and try and get to it first. And so I don't think it's just because, look, I've had these conversations, multi-sell conversations all my career. Yeah. It's not just the multi-sell, I think, that's going wrong. It's some bits in between that's also not quite there.
Yeah, to your point, it's the lead management. What happens to the leads after they get sold, right? Right. Do you have a mature, thought out process that takes that into account? It's not just, there are companies here, and I won't name them offhand, but big mortgage companies that have been accused and proven of dialing leads hundreds of times.
Yeah. Same in the UK.
And just being like hitting the phones and hitting the phones and hitting the phones and hitting the phones and hitting, because they want to beat out the next big company on that battle as well. But over the last years or so, I think that's stopped because they realized, going full circle back to our conversation about 30 minutes ago, is that all that effort is not reaping the return on investment. No. All those dials, all those minutes of people leaving mess, doing different things, are actually hurting their net, their return on investment. If they were more strategic with their follow-up, email, text, here, being more customer centric versus just blowing them up, they'd be more successful from a cost standpoint and revenue standpoint. Yeah. And so having that, there's a lot of moving parts, and this is actually what excites me about lead generation world. What we're doing into the UK is bringing up these conversations and talking about these best practices with transparency and lead management. It's not just about how do you generate leads via paid search, which it will be that, but it's also, what are these, how do we continue to evolve and grow this company so people are successful? What are the components that from the buy side need to be in place? Lead management system, a process that actually talks about nurturing leads in a meaningful way, not putting them into a dialer or a call center necessarily. That, transparency, all these things. And that's what I get excited about having this conversation, because I see that there's, they need to take place. These conversations have to take place,
No, you're absolutely right, and in exactly the right spot. And actually your event is exactly the right place to bring all the players together, right? Just because actually you can have a conversation like this one, which is, that works, but that doesn't work for me. And so how do you fix that bit? That's the bit that I'm interested in. I think, I cannot wait, Michael. I think I'm looking forward to it post vaccine, and we'll be good to be having a pint.
Yeah, I hope so, man. Well, fingers crossed. We're working towards April, and we hope it's going to happen. But maybe this is a good place to leave it off. I mean, we could probably talk all evening, but I know you got to get to the kids to dinner and all this sort of stuff over there, and I got to get to work here at Pacific time. So, if anybody wants to sign up, just go to contactstate.com. Is it .com?
That's
okay,
it. That's
I
it.
couldn't remember if it was a .io or something else, but contactstate.com.
We're old fashioned.
And they can go and submit their info for the newsletter, the leader, and then certainly reach out to you. There's a contact form on there and ask you questions, all that kind of stuff too, I suppose.
Yeah, I'd like that. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, good stuff. It was great chatting with you, and hopefully we'll do it again in April in face-to-face.
Looking forward to it, Mike. Take care.
All right.
See you later.